my body was finally in a state where I had the nutrients and the environment to purge what I think was deeply stored childhood. So these basically exploded out of my legs. I had these swellings and then pus and things coming out. On the outside, everyone was saying it's infected, you could lose your legs. Like, maybe.
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hey everyone, wanted to hop on here and give a quick audio disclaimer for this podcast. As you might have noticed, it sounds a little bit robotic, and that's because as soon as we finished recording and I went to pull the audio files from the mics, the file was empty. I was able to salvage using AI the recording from the cameras, so thankfully the conversation remains. I don't think the powers that be want this one to be put out, so that's exactly why I'm releasing it. Enjoy this conversation with Soul. I know it's a good one. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Podcast, a podcast centered around self-mastery, truth, and personal renaissance. I'm your host, Zach Shankin. Today, I'm joined by Soul Brawl, a man who needs a little introduction. Soul is an entrepreneur, athlete, and student of life, showing lessons and wisdom across his cult social media following. Soul has led from the front in what might be poorly summarized as the holistic or esoteric health awakening, taking place over the last 4+ years, creating content, products, and a community to elevate vitality and consciousness. Despite online controversy surrounding his unconventional lifestyle, Soul is a man who lives his message fully, and I'm excited to see where this conversation will take us today. Soul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow, that's probably the best introduction I've had to date.
Clip that. Yeah, I always like to give people their shine.
Gas me up.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to start, to have people smiling and thinking positively of themselves. And I think that a lot of people don't get the shine that they deserve. I think especially men, like, we struggle with verbal praise towards one another. So it's my job as the host to get you smiling at the beginning, and I'm glad that did the trick. Obviously, we are privileged to be recording this in a beautiful villa, your villa. The previous episode, for those that were tuned in, was with your brother and roommate at the time, or currently
Figurative brother. Not actual brother.
Well,
in another life.
Sharing ancestry for sure.
Yeah.
Gabe, which was an awesome honor, just on the couch behind the cameras now. But yeah, thank you for inviting me into your home. I have been eager to sit down and have this conversation for a while now. For myself, I've been following your content, and while there have been near misses, I suppose, when you did your US tour and online episodes, I know now very clearly like why it was meant to have us not do it then and do it now.
Yeah.
Extremely synchronous having us meet here, and I'm really, really excited and grateful, for you just opening your home and the relationship that's been budding over the last 2 or so weeks.
My pleasure, man. It's all divinely ordained, so just following that.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. A lot we could go into, but I definitely think one of the things that I want to start out with is by, and this is not meant in any way as a gotcha, but knowing the universal laws, you receive what you put out into the world. I think, and especially having spent time with you, your intentions are good to raise and elevate the collective consciousness to help people live a more vital lifestyle. You live it in your own life. You do it in the people that you work with in your community, your friends, etc. With that being said, you are also a subject of, like I mentioned in the intro, some controversy. And it does seem like there are people out there that try to poke and prod. So in your opinion, why do you think you are a subject of, call it controversy, or even potentially like direct targeting? Again, not meant as a gotcha, but given that your intentions are good, why do you feel like you still receive that kind of resistance?
There's several layers to this. So one is that if you're building in public, you're doing things and you're posting it online content, no matter what you're doing, you could literally just be saving puppies' lives on a daily basis, and some schmo out there would say, you're taking jobs away from the puppy coroner or something. You know, like their minds are twisted in such a way that no matter what you do, you're gonna have someone online, some freak who says something. So it is what it is. Hazard of the game. So pay no mind. Two, what I am doing, part of my role in this life, it seems, is to challenge previously held beliefs. And you're always going to get pushback when you first do that, because you have to. If everyone holds this belief, you're the first, one of the first. I'm not the first to like have these beliefs, but I have been bringing a lot of these beliefs to a more public sphere online, the audience I have now. Inevitably, if lots of people, the mainstream belief of something is this way, and you say, hang on, it should be mainly this other way. Have we considered that? Or this way actually doesn't seem that good. Maybe it's wrong. If everyone has that belief, they're going to, no, you are just, it's just a thing. So I understand these things. I don't take it personally. I have been through the fire and flames of this for several years now, with putting stuff out online and challenging my own beliefs and challenging the beliefs of the health sphere on Twitter or whatever. It's never ever, people say I'm like drumming up engagement bait. I've never posted something just to get engagement. I'll post things that I know will rile people up, but it's always with this underlying reason that I think it's the truth, and it deserves to at least be talked about in some way. So yeah, the way that I orient myself in delivering this content is going to invite people to say things back. And it's like, okay, now we're in the arena, and if you have some throwaway comment yesterday, some dude called me crazy because I was rightly saying that all vaccines are trash, poison. And I click on his profile just to see. Okay, you're calling me crazy. All right. Let's have a look at him. Complete soy bug, man. He's a sports fan. Like, that's all his Twitter is. And so it's like, okay, he's attacking this thing which he has no credible success in real life that he can show on his Twitter, who looks like complete soy. So these are the people that are attacking you if you're out in public doing things objectively, outperforming them in various ways, and that's how you got to treat them. So it's like, all right, you call me crazy, bro. Let's just take a look at the soy that you have going on in your whole demeanor, face, image, whatever. I didn't have to say anything. I just post his profile picture that's public, and everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's why. And so they objectively see someone that's like doing it better than they are, and it triggers things in them. And so they project, and like that's all it is. When you take, the issue is if you have an online brand and take things seriously, you take things personally, not even just online, but if you have, whatever job that you do, or even just in your friendship group, or take yourself seriously, and some schmo, unconscious schmo will try to fling their shit onto you, and you got to go to Aikido, and it doesn't matter. Like, you can just dodge it. The issues arise when you take that shit and you smear it metaphorically on yourself by accepting their opinion as truth. No, but I don't do that. And you defend yourself, but don't take on these opinions of the objectively stupid masses. And that's how, of those negative opinions, obviously there's good back and forth that you want to promote, and I do on my profiles. But I think we're at the time, I used to be more, shall we say, just completely ignore any naysayers. Yeah. Which was good. And it does, because 9 times out of 10, it doesn't matter. Right. They're no one, whatever. Recently, I've become more combative in, okay, if you're going to come on my profile, talk shit with your uneducated opinion, I've actually done way more research than you, and say, hey, look, this is why this is wrong. You want to attack me, call me names, then let's have it back. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more fun for me. Yeah. And I see it as an opportunity for me to, Twitter's like WWE, right? People will follow you if you're in the ring jumping off the top ropes and elbowing some schmoes who arced up for no reason and they don't have any, actual results or knowledge or whatever. So that's what it's become a bit more performative, and it's fun. That's just the nature of online right now.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's been interesting to watch, especially over the last, I guess it's been half a year now since the face reveal, like kind of embodying the message more fully. And choosing, in addition to that, to really kind of go a little bit more on the offensive, defensive. So at bare minimum, it's entertainment for the timeline. Like, I enjoy watching the banter, but I was curious to kind of hear about the experiential side and some of your decision making there. Obviously, like, listeners of this podcast will know the intro and outro are segments of the Man in the Arena speech from Theodore Roosevelt, and famously the line is like, "It's not the critic who counts." And I think that is the classic case, as you said, like, you step out into the light and the peanut gallery always has something to say, but it's literally just water off a duck's back if they're not in the arena. Now, interestingly, you did bring up the idea that, like, you can kind of expose the personage behind the message simply just by saying, like, post physique or posting their profile picture, which it's effective for the gameplay. But I've been wrestling with this in my head as well, because I've always thought that proof of work is important. Like, especially in the health sphere, it's like your body and your physical wellness should be a representation of, like, your school of thought, your beliefs, and obviously you're somebody who has the physique essentially to back what you're talking about. However, recently there have been some people that I've been interested in their teachings, and I've kind of stress tested this idea on myself, which is like, maybe the important thing is actually replicating that truth in other people, i.e., if you can teach somebody this thing and it changes their life, and then it's like a replicable phenomena, then that's kind of the embodiment. And there's a few characters that come to mind, like Jack Cruz is somebody who I'm not going to side with or against, but he knows his stuff for sure. I recently found it, and I was resistant to his message for a long time because he's an overweight, old, pasty dude. Less pasty as time goes on because he's spending more time in the sun. But I was resistant to it. It's like, well, dude, you're not healthy. But the fact that he is changing people's lives, he has data to back. So I'm curious how you think about, I don't know, like, where do you receive your feedback from? Or do you think that there's a case to be made that is more of a reductionist argument rather than an effective test of the idea as opposed to ad hominem?
Yeah, I think the issue is, I literally tweeted this yesterday, is that you never want to take advice from someone that you wouldn't want your life to be like in that domain when they're trying to give you advice on. So if they're trying to tell you how to lift and they're smaller than you, they're fatter than you, it's like, maybe you know what you're talking about. However, because there's no proof that I can see other than yapping, then I'm much, much less likely to take your words at meaningful value. And as someone that is putting out this health advice, if I was overweight, didn't look healthy, vibrant, whatever else, I couldn't expect people to take me seriously. And it's how I got my first couple thousand followers, is posting my physique. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about with bodybuilding, with training, with health in general, because I had built this. And without that proof of work, no one was going to take me seriously. You have these faceless accounts. Not that I'm against anonymity as a practice, because I believe in that genuinely. If you're talking about values and philosophy and things, you don't necessarily have to have like a person behind it. I don't think that way. However, if you're constantly talking about ideas and yapping and things, but you can't objectively show that you're living that out. If you're talking about money, do you have wealth? If you're talking about women, like, do you have a healthy relationship? Whatever it is, how's people meant to take you seriously? It's like there's been an epidemic of the facade because of social media. It's easy to present a picture of something. I was overhearing a conversation at the sauna the other day where this kid was paying $2,000 a month to have access to a Shopify store, and that Shopify store was running like 500K a month sales, whatever. But he was paying $2,000 a month to have access to the Shopify account so he could put the screenshots on and then sell that from there.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a scam that's going on that I didn't know existed. But you just got to be, like, unless someone can objectively show the results of whatever they're preaching about, you really got to be careful with online stuff, because you never really know who they are unless, like, they're taking pictures from Pinterest instead of their own life. There's just authenticity and resonance as you got to have a discernment for. And I try to do that as best I can in my own life. Obviously, taking inspiration from aesthetics and everything that's not my own, but living it is always going to be the most powerful thing. And what people, like, if you want to give advice, then you have to be a living embodiment that life advice works. Same mental stuff. If you're emotional and outbursting on the timeline, and then you want to talk about stealth, and then it's like, what's really adding up here? That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for a while, like, I think the ad hominem quote unquote fallacy is actually, it's incorrect only because we learn from people, and humans are extremely story driven. And so we need to tether all kinds of learnings to the teacher themselves. And the example I've used in the past is like, I call it kind of like the prophet problem, where somebody might be preaching the right message, but if the pastor who has brought people, quote unquote, into the relationship with the Lord, like, he has evidence in those people's lives, but years later, it turns out that the entire time he was preaching for years and years and years, he was diddling kids behind the scenes or had an affair with his wife. And this happens obviously in the church, the Christian church, a ton. So many people leave the faith and leave their religious practices because of that sort of unraveling from the messenger themselves. And it's also why it's crucially important in, say, Christianity, that Jesus is the image of perfection, or in Islam, that Muhammad is this kind of basically infallible messenger of God. Because if the prophet himself is broken or doesn't have evidence in his life, then it does create downstream effects of doubt around the ideas themselves. Again, they could be saying the right thing, but if there is a problem in their life, then it does create that dissonance. And that's why I definitely admire what you do. Like, it starts with experimentation for yourself, and you actually just run it for your own intuition, physical body. Hey, I've heard about this raw diet. Let me make the transition. Let me see what evidence it has in my life. And then going to share it with other people, like, hey, I've experienced these sort of symptoms or these sort of improvements. I encourage you to do the same. Now, one thing I did want to ask you about, as someone who is also trying to grow an audience, I think you have done a good job of marketing, garnering attention, and having spoken with you over the last week, you are aware of a lot more than you choose to share online. And it's kind of like a tactful distillation, if you want to call it that. I'm curious how you think about simplifying or quote unquote dumbing down the message to be communicative on the timeline, rather than like leaning into the really, say, esoteric or interesting kind of stuff that appeals to that mind, that like really intellectual mind, and where you potentially live in your personal life. But for the timeline, it's a version that's more receptive. It's something I struggle with, and I'm curious how conscious you are with that.
Yeah, I always think about it, you gotta have both, because there's the more simplified stuff, which resonates with more people at face value, because a lot of people are working their jobs, they got things on their mind, and they see a tweet which is hundreds of words long and going to these extended concepts, and like, but if they see me saying sun your balls, I could go into why the sunlight is activating the Leydig cells and building testosterone, and biological mumbo jumbo. But it doesn't hit the same as sun your balls. What is that? Click, and then it's just a method of capturing attention, and not everything has to be super in-depth, esoteric, or explained in these ways to be helpful. So you need to have both. You need to have the deeper understandings that you have for yourself, and maybe some level of inner circle, or for conversations like podcasts where you can actually get down to the brass tacks and elucidate things and extend them. But you're not going to be able to fit all this into a tweet. You have long form newsletters in your email. You can do that inside my Discord community, like those kinds of things where people already bought in and they're just like, they want to learn more. But if you're building a brand, building an audience, then you need to understand that you need to have these bite-sized morsels to throw in the water. People be like, "Ooh, what's that? Tasty, yummy." They get in, and then they see your esoteric schizo threads like on your page later on. It's just a different skill, really, and you need to have both, because you're actually doing people a disservice by only doing the hyper detailed stuff and being like, "Oh, I can't do it. Like, I'm not even." It's like, learn the skill.
Yeah.
Learn the skill, because by doing that, you're leading people to the longer form, more detailed stuff at the end of the tunnel. You got to have like a nice, attractive entrance. They go, "What's inside here?" And then they go in and get deeper and deeper and deeper. But if the outset is just some super complex thing, you're going to lose a lot of people.
I agree. It's something I'm working to internalize for myself, because I love to think about these deep concepts. Obviously, I have the podcast where I can really wander into the woods with experts in their specific field. But I also recognize that, like you said, I think the biggest internalization is you're doing more people a disservice by not communicating your message more effectively with better copy.
Yeah. Also, if you're a true expert, you can explain it in simple terms. Like, it's kind of the midwit meme. If you're actually on this higher bell curve of understanding, you should be able to explain it in a way that's like bite-sized.
I do agree. And I've always thought that truth with a capital T should be simple. Like something like, God is loving, or truth.
All the spirituality. Love.
Yeah. I mean, it all ends up terminating in like you said, it's the bell curve meme where like the Ooga Booga person also has it just like the wizard. I just can't help, I guess, just maybe it's my intellectual curiosity, like wandering under the bell curve. Like
you have to go through it. If you want to deeper understand, you can't just go Ooga Booga to like, you have to go through everything else to get to, maybe there's some similar outcomes. But there's also, if you're doing the same thing as the Ooga Booga, but you have this understanding and intention and energy behind it, even though the action is the same, or the outer understanding is the same, because of your inner understanding, that shifts how your mind is affecting reality in those actions. So it's not that you have to just Ooga Booga everything, because then you don't learn the things which then shape your inner intention, which actually affects how it plays out in the morphic field of reality. So you kind of have to go on that journey yourself if you're called to, if you're actually interested in this stuff. Also, people's roles are different. Maybe you are the super autistic guy that really goes in depth, and that's all you love, all you want to share about. There are people with big audiences that do that. It's just this hyper fixation on one thing. And if that is your destiny, your soul, you don't need to be doing the TikTok edits or whatever else. For me, balance of both, because that's just how things just seem to have played out. Really, the advice for content creation things is like, take these larger business lessons and understand how you can apply it to your own life. But if you're having to do things which feel very, very inauthentic because you heard someone, even me, say do it, then it's not going to hit, it's not going to resonate, you're not going to feel good doing it. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it brings to mind the story The Alchemist, the short book. Like, you simply have to walk the hero's journey. It's almost like you don't even have a say in the matter. If you're somebody who's just called by the great questions, you're called to explore these truths. Like, you have to just go wander in the woods, live life, experience, try things, maybe have a psychedelic experience, maybe backpack the world, only to find out that a lot of the things that truly matter potentially were with you at home and with your family, with like the ooga booga side of the journey, but you did have to weather the graph.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing with content creation. Like there is ultimately you could only create what you were meant to the whole time. And as your content evolves, it's basically just a algorithmically frozen version of your personal evolution.
Yeah.
Like I have not been on Twitter that long, but I'm sure if I scrolled back over the last year or two and found some of the random tweets I've sprinkled out throughout, I could probably pinpoint where my like actual psychology and my personal development was. And even thinking how much I've grown personally in the last 6 to 8 months. I mean, it's night and day the way I view the world.
So
In many, many ways. So yeah, I guess with all of that, have you ever had people go back through, because I think with the way that you communicate, for instance, like the sun your balls thing, you speak often on the timeline in very like objective terms, like eat raw meat, vaccines are bad. These are not stances that I disagree with, but those are examples of things that you're stating essentially or positing potentially as fact, at least in the copy itself. But you're also somebody who, when I communicate with you one-on-one, I know that you appreciate nuance and the ability for that position to evolve. Do you ever face dissonance with that in your head? Like, should I even say this right now because I'm not certain how it'll pan out in a year with more information?
yeah, and if those things are present in my head, then I haven't tweeted about. You know what I mean? The things that I have tweeted, and I may be wrong in the future, but they are, as you said, an algorithmically frozen point in time of me where I'm at, my understanding now. I truly believe that raw meat is objectively healthier for you in my own experimentation, research, everything. So I can confidently, on my Twitter page, say a tweet, raw meat is healthier for you. Like I like nuance. I mean, it's logically consistent to have nuanced discussion about a lot of things and view things from different points of view. I'm not against that. But if I have a belief that I think is valid, then I'm going to plant my flag and state it. And then other people are free to disagree with it. But I would never limit myself from saying something just because some guy is going to possibly misinterpret it or want me to be like, this isn't a nuanced take. It's a tweet. Like it's in a lot of senses is throwaway. It's just a thought that I tapped in and then sent it. I only ever tweet things that I genuinely stand for and believe. So the nuanced discussion is there for people that want it, that engage in a respectful way. And for opportunities like this, there's nuance. You can't necessarily fit all nuance in all social media content. And I think it's just a bit of bad faith with some people where I'll say raw meat is good. And they'll be like, well, are you saying that you want everyone to have parasites and infections and die? No, that's not what I said. That's not what I hinted at. But because you've had this objectively stated small tweet, they then see that as an opportunity. Like, well, I can interpret it in the worst way possible. And then so like people like that, they're not genuinely trying to understand or want a discussion. So you kind of just got to ignore people like that as well. Somewhat.
What is something that, and it could be in the last few years or maybe your life at large, do you think is the largest 180 you've made in your life? Like a position that you used to strongly stand for and you've since really revised how you think about it?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. Like the raw meat one, it's just an understanding of nutrition. That's probably the biggest shift, is like understanding nutrition where raw animal foods and everything else is the way to heal your body. I would say probably the biggest shift was my understanding of infections and how the body heals itself, where 2 years ago, I would have believed that an infection was some little critter getting inside you, attacking your body, and your body was fighting it off. Like your immune system was fighting off these things, believing in viruses as an infective little creature. So these are like pretty big fundamental shifts in terms of health, because it changes you from thinking that your body is this system that attacks itself. People say you have an autoimmune disorder. Your body is just freaking out and attacking itself. No, no, no. Your body is reacting to some external toxin that is damaging you, and it's trying to get it out, or it's trying to process it in some way, and that affects you. That understanding of things totally shifted how I understand the body. It's a divine system that knows what it's doing. It clears poisons out.
It's powerful, and I've come into a lot of the same beliefs over the last year through my own learning. And I think the reason it's kind of a gradual unfolding is because it is so counter narrative. Like it is from first principles exactly the opposite of the way the medical system was written. Obviously very intentional in my opinion. But I compare it against my experiences, and I'm coming to believe that even beyond the environmental toxins, which I think is 100% at play, I think when you take into the consideration the universal laws, knowing that everything terminates at vibration and frequency at its kind of basic level, I think that emotion also plays a fundamental role at disease. For instance, we're here in Bali, and famously, there's the Bali belly. Travelers get when you come here, and what they tell you is that, you know, the tap water isn't great. Obviously, I choose not to drink the tap water. It's probably full of all kinds of other terrible toxins like birth control and trash and all that stuff because the infrastructure is poor. However, when I compare my experience over the last 8 months living here, the only times I ever got Bali belly, after I got through the 24-hour, 48-hour period of dealing with the symptoms, I recognized that that was an accumulation of, in my case, emotional stress. Like I was either rushing too much or putting myself under too much strain with my business or whatever it may be. And then that was like a stop point. My body was like, hey, you need to pay attention. You need to actually like slow the fuck down. A phrase that I love about pain in general, and I think these detox processes that you're describing can sometimes be painful, is from Michael Ammons on Twitter. He's a chronic health guy, and he made an acronym for pain, which is pay attention inside now. And that's all your body is giving you pain for. It's saying like, hey, like look inside, pay attention here. And a lot of times it could be something stored from, you know, years 0 to 7, childhood trauma, emotional parent wounds that got stored in an energy center, whether it's your low stomach or your upper traps and neck area. And all that tension and that pain is energetic at its roots. And I would say that the detox processes that you're describing, getting sick, coughing, skin lesions, all of that, can often be at its root like an emotional thing. I don't know how much you want to, I know you're putting together a piece on this for long form with your content, but you had a kind of an experience over the last year dealing with some detox processes. Do you care to open a little bit of that up? Because I know that a lot of this deep gnosis is from actually walking the path yourself rather than just studying it.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm going to do like a long form video about this where I really get to the nuts and bolts of it, show the videos and pictures that I have of it. But basically the summary is that I had, and you can see the scar from it, a couple of them. There a couple of things in my legs where I had these holes open up, basically like these boils, lesions, whatever you want to call it. And this was after several months of eating a raw diet. Raw primal diet, specifically raw meat, raw milk, raw dairy, all of these nutrients, which if you've gone most of your life eating just cooked food, just pasteurized milk, you never had access to before. So your body is now getting these nutrients that it can finally either use the fats to detox deeply held toxins, or repair things that it couldn't before, cells, or even just have the vibrational energy to go through these quite intensive processes. I was also drinking spring water, Vortex, and also structuring it with some other crystals that I had. All of this is increasing the resonant energy of the water that I was drinking in, increases the energy that I had in my body going on, to the point where I was also had stopped traveling. I was at home in Australia for a few months, had a routine and everything. So for me, it made sense that my body was finally in a state where I had the nutrients and the environment to purge what I think was.
This conversation has been excellent. I think we could keep going on a lot of different stuff, but I want to be respectful to your time and the listeners as well. I always exit with 3 closer questions to every guest. So the first is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be? This is barring the butterfly effect.
Trust yourself more. What my soul has told me in my life has always worked out to be the best thing. And a lot of friction in my life has been the result of putting other people's opinions or words or life outlooks over mine, or being like, you should maybe consider what they're saying. Whereas my soul and your soul knows for you what is the best thing at this point in time. And you can't go wrong if you follow that. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of friction and other things can be eliminated if you just, from the get-go, trust your soul's guidance first and foremost above anything else. And that's God talking to you. So he knows best.
Amen. Secondly, what is one quote that's always stuck with you, or do you try to live by it?
One quote. It is what it is. I don't know. I don't know who quoted that first, but it's so applicable to everything, and it's just such a pure distillation of the wisdom that we can't control things. The thing is what it is. You can then view that and go, oh, but it's this, and therefore I'm going to freak out. It's like, yeah, but it is what it is. So let's just take the best steps of whatever that is for in that situation, rather than being emotional about it, or like, you can't change the past, you can't control other people. It's like, yeah, it is what it is. Even if you've massively fucked up, it's now gone, it's now done. So it is what it is, and then keep going.
A little bit of ooga booga wisdom here at the end. And then finally, what do you believe is your unique gift to give the world?
To be able to translate the pure natural esoteric health into something that the mainstream can understand in a hopefully entertaining way.
Well, I've been entertained thus far. It's been a privilege to watch you on the timeline for quite a while now, and it's been excellent to make your acquaintance of the last few weeks. Soul, where can the people find more of you, and what are you working on that you're excited about?
So the main website at the moment is souldet.com, Soul Department. It's the shop where we have everything that I make and create on there: clothing, soap, perfumes, everything. So check that out. My book, Soul Bra, The Soul Way, is a distillation of years of my wisdom and things that I've figured out about the world. And I guarantee if you read it, you're going to be better off for understanding life in general. And yeah, Soul Bra on Instagram, Twitter, where you find me. Thank you, Zach.
Of course, bro. All your links will be in the description. If you've enjoyed and made it thus far, thank you for making it to the end. Obviously, you found us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You can continue to follow along those platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for the behind the scenes of all the stuff going on in my universe, even here in Bali as well. You can follow myself at ZDSCHENKN on Instagram and Twitter. Sign up to the newsletter, which is recent, at thefittribune.co. But more than anything, thank you for spending your most valuable resource your attention with myself, Soul today. Memento Mori, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Tribune Podcast.
Ciao.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.